Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to PTV World's special transmission. I'm Maryam and joining me is Shehzad Raza. We are going to be talking about terrorism, which has left, of course, scars in Pakistan. And when we talk about the lost lives, thousands of lives have been lost so far, and the economic impacts cannot be understated. In today's program, we'll be talking about different dimensions of terrorism, especially the direct and indirect cost of course, terrorism. And when we talk about the economic toll, Shehzad, it cannot be understated.
Very, very rightly said, Maryam, and it's an honor to be part of the Pakistan PTV World transmission on this terrorism. We, the Pakistani nation, we are resilient people. We rendered so many sacrifices, as rightly pointed out by Maryam. Since 9/11, we lost thousands of people in this war against terror, lost billions of dollars in terms of economy, but we stood fast, and we already have won this war. And rest assured that whatever is left of these militants and animals, and these days we call them the Khawarij, we will snuff them out. We are winning this war, but it is very important that we should give our people the hope. And that's why the PTV World has brought you this transmission along with several eminent panelists, the experts who will tell us that which phases we have passed through and exactly where do we stand at the moment. So without any further ado, Maryam, with your permission, I would like to introduce our guest today in our panel. We have General Zahid Mehmood with us. He's Tamgha Bisalat, a known soldier, and has supervised so many operations against the militant. Thank you so much, Jill, for joining us in the studio. And we have Dr. Jasim Anwar. He's a member of the Planning Commission, development expert, economist, and wearing so many hats. Thank you so much, Dr. for joining us in the studio. And along with these two gentlemen, we have Faisal Raza Khan, our own PTV anchor, analyst, and the journalist, and my dear colleague. Faisal, thank you so much for joining us as well. With your permission again, Maryam, I would like to ask the very first question from Faisal. Faisal, very quickly and briefly, tell us, when we talk about our losses, the human loss, the economic loss, how would it translate in terms of words? How would you describe it, that how many losses we suffered so far since 9/11?
Shehzad, thank you very much, first of all, for having me, and thank you very much, Maryam, and salam to all panelists who are there in the studio. So, literally speaking, Pakistan is fighting this menace of terrorism from the last 2 decades, and our valiant armed forces stood firm and fighting this menace bravely as we are laying down lives of our not only our security forces, intelligence agencies, but also the police and law enforcement agencies for the last 2 decades. And fortunately, that as you have rightly said, that Pakistan is winning this war, but this is a very hard battle we are fighting right now. From the last at least 10 years, we have started our first major operation, although the operation started back in 2008, 2009, but Zarbe was the first large-scale operation in which Pakistan has got numerous successes, and after that, Operation Raddul Fasad. And so far, from the last 2-3 years, unfortunately, ungoverned spaces in Afghanistan and lots of terror over there, most of the terrorist organizations have already over there. And
we will go into the details of these operations at the later part of our program, but at the moment I would like to ask you to tell us exactly the number of casualties we suffered since 9/11, and as we are...
Of course, when we talk about the direct and indirect human cost of terrorism in Pakistan specifically, Faisal, can you share the figures?
Huge human cost in terms of our security forces, as civilians, the law enforcement agencies, the police, and all others. So far, at least 81,000, more than 81,000 of the civilians and the armed forces personnel laid down their lives fighting this menace, and also more than 10,000 of the Pakistani valiant security forces personnel, in which officers and soldiers, the Jawans of Pakistan Army, are also included in that. More than 10,000 casualties we have. And from the last year, I mentioned here that at least 645 terrorist attacks happened, in which at least more than 800 of the soldiers and our civilians were martyred. Then during this year, the first 11 months, So far, at least 856 terrorist attacks happened in which more than 1,000 of the people, including the security forces, their personnel martyred. Uh, these terrorist attacks are surged by at least 22% this year from as compared to the last year. Just in the last month of November, we have 71 terrorist attacks. Those were surged by at least three attacks, and in October there were 68 attacks. And unfortunately, most of the victim is the province of Khyber. 50% of the attacks, uh, the attacks happened in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa and then in Balochistan.
Right.
Point taken,
Right,
Faisal.
right. Right. Thank you for sharing these figures. And of course, Shehzad, these are heart-wrenching figures. But let's bring in General Zahid into the discussion. General Saab, you have, of course, served in the areas as well. Let's talk about the communities and the social fabric that is damaged when we talk about these terrorist activities.
Thank you very much, Maryam and Shehzad, for the invite. Let me begin by making a fundamental statement that Pakistan in this global war on terrorism has sacrificed the most and Pakistan has suffered the most. No other country has suffered as Pakistan has suffered for the international and global peace. Our effort has been not only for the peace in Pakistan, but peace in the region and peace in, and for the international peace. Now coming over to the, Maryam, what you have asked, before we speak about this, let me tell you that what kind of threat today Pakistan is facing, you know. So there are primarily two major threats. In Balochistan, we are facing our enemy who want to alter our geography, all right? So they're talking about Azad Balochistan, they have their social disruptive movements, their other ways and means. And in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, we are facing an enemy who wants to change the way of life, our way of life. So they want us to adopt their that false narrative of Islam, what they are portraying. So they want to change us, that they will tell us how much, what our men has to do, our girls
Ultimately
will not do
causing
this.
a disruption.
So that is the actual thing what you are talking about, the social fiber. So before 1979, the Russian invasion in this region, you see the Pakistan was extremely stable. We had a very good social fiber and the society was growing. So unfortunately, we had to face these Russians in our backyard, and because of the environment at that time, maybe the state has adopted a policy which may be wrong, but today we are saying that that was wrong. Maybe it was correct at that time. So nobody knew that what Russians are going to do in this area. Then after that, we were expecting that there will be peace in Afghanistan, but again that infighting started place, and that impacted Pakistan. So there was no gun culture in Pakistan. There was no, I mean, illegal spectrum which is related to this terrorism, like narcotics and all that. So that came into Pakistan.
Right.
So if we are going,
and sorry, just last, and most importantly, the bad face of Islam actually. So that was the reason, and our youngsters were attracted towards that war, and probably that was fought on a wrong narrative.
So if we're going to find out the root causes of this problem, so do you think that we should go back all the way to 1979 when Russia invaded this part of the region?
Look, Shehzad, we need to understand that first of all we have to set our national objectives, that what kind of society we want, because a lot of time has passed. So we have to go back to learn from our mistakes. But we should not be, succumb to the baggage of the past. All right, we should not start blaming who is responsible, who has done this. So we must identify the mistakes which we have made. We must identify the way forward for our nation and society and move on. Yes, and for that we need to have a whole of a nation approach. Maybe in the later part of the program we'll be speaking about it.
But Dr. Jasim, when we talk about terrorism, this is not only restricted to Pakistan, this is a global phenomenon. Can you share with us what does Global Terrorism Index tells about Pakistan's, of course, resurgence of terrorism and how we are moving forward?
Yes, first of all, thank you so much for having me in this very crucial and I think very wanted discussions on this PTV world. So, coming first from the context of how the global countries are ranked in terms of the terrorism is called Global Terrorism Index. And it is basically published by International Economic and Peace Institute. So they have various criteria, including how many people die, injured, incident of the terrorism happening, and also the number of people hostages. So in 2011, when Pakistan was, at the peak of, being the victim of the terrorism, this Pakistan was standing at number 2 in the ranking. And then globally, it came
Like
down.
second worst.
Second worst, actually. Like so much economic loss we were suffering going through that period. And you're all aware of the, how much we have sacrificed for this war. Then it going down, and then 2018, we reached to 8. It was a relatively peaceful time when the government, through its, various strategic actions, took the control and then, nipped the bud in the evil by, controlling those through many operations, the terrorism activities and, creating, a national dialogue and as well as, creating an international impression. So this figure again now last 1 year or so, coming up back to number 4 from the top. Because of, your recent insurgencies from Afghanistan across the border and also from within country through external forces that many are operating because of Pakistan geo-strategic location in the region. And it's not only one country agenda to sabotage the peace in this country. It's a multilateral international forums that, operate to halt the GDP growth that is, country was envisioning.
And you just mentioned the geographical location and how much does it contribute in this index? Because Pakistan, we are in a really tight spot at one and Afghanistan on the other, India.
Very
so
true.
we are sandwiched between two powers which are not very,
very true.
good to us.
If you recall, we had a program last year. It was on, the power balance, how the countries create a power balance through, initially it was US-driven power balance, and then now it's shifting toward the south, and now further going to, the BRIC initiative. So Pakistan, because of its position, many countries are landlocked. And the China is investing a lot, and these days, the China is leading the economy in many ways. So nobody wants that. We have you must have witnessed many Chinese were attacked during last 2-3 years, and this is the only reason why the Pakistan economic ties with these Central Asians and the Chinese, and including
Of
Russians,
course.
have a very soft corner for us.
Of course, and that leads me to my next question. Of course, terrorism not only instills fears in these, communities, but the indirect cost leads to disabled people as well. Let's talk about the economic cost of terrorism.
Yes. So, there are, whenever any international partner or international country or even within country, people invest, the security situation is number 1 prerequisite, like a peace in the country and sustainability and continuity of the policies. This is a prerequisite for investments. So direct loss is number 1 by the loss of infrastructure that we face. Loss of human lives, because each human life has its own contribution in terms of, being a productive.
And our human capital is being damaged.
Exactly. I'll explain how. And another one is, the foreign direct investments, your FDI component that many people normally invest in the countries which are cheap labor, and they can get, better services. Like India is enjoying the, dividend of the youth through IT initiatives, and Pakistan, because of that impression, we suffered a lot. Now, another is your indirect loss. Number of indirect loss, disability is one small component. Big component is your mental and psychosocial health.
Right.
Because
psychological
trauma that people and the generations they go through, and their productivity goes down, and then they if you do a cross-sectional assessment of the mental health of the people, it's rising for last 10 years. Especially the highest was in that time.
Right.
And that causes a lot of stress. People lack their productivity.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, Faisal, before coming to you, I have one question with General Saab, and then we would be asking questions from you. General Saab, Faisal, our correspondent and anchor, he just mentioned that 10,000 soldiers and officers, they embraced martyrdom during this war against terror. So we have like 10,000 households which have a Shaheed to mourn and to recall or to eulogize, which is, you know, a great honor as well for the families of the Shohada. I would like to ask you your personal account. You led so many operations and you suffered as well. You lost one of your legs. I mean, that is something, and we are honored that you are here and to share your story with us and with the audience.
Shehzad, of course, there's a lot of blood for the nation. But this is, you know, this will be very small sacrifice if we are able to achieve a peaceful and stable Pakistan. That's the purpose of the life of a soldier. And we take a lot of pride in that. You've spoken about, though sometimes it's very difficult to mention your own account, especially because our youngsters, the way they are leading us in the war, so their sacrifices are too big.
But you are a role model for them as well.
Shehzad, it was 2007-8, and when I was participating in the operations, it was 2008 in Bajor agency. At that time, this Bajor was almost an Afghan agency. You know, there was not a
no writ of the state.
We were not having an effective writ of the state. So only we were confined to Khar fort, and that's all. So we were clearing that compound. At that time, there were a lot of terrorists and Khawarij from Taliban's as well, and IS, Al-Qaeda, and
groups, yeah.
other Central Asian terrorists. So we were carrying out the compound clearance operation. Compound clearance means that if you're in one compound, so next compound is occupied by the terrorists.
Okay.
So I was Lieutenant Colonel commanding my unit.
Close pitch battles.
It was close pitch battles. I mean, on the other side of the wall of your house is occupied by the terrorists.
Oh.
So it was almost extraordinary close combat battles. So I was Lieutenant Colonel. I was commanding my unit, 63 Frontier Force. So in that operation, once we were clearing these Khawarij from that area, a mortar shell. I was hit by a mortar shell, and when I fell down after that shell strike. So that place was raided. It was an open field also then when I was injured. So that was raided, and I received 6 bullets in my right leg.
6 bullets?
6 bullets.
Come again, 6 bullets?
6
and
bullets.
You survived? Wow.
Alhamdulillah.
That's amazing.
There is someone who is, you know, bigger than you, who protects you. And then I lost my, I had this amputation. I lost my right leg, but 7 of my officers, and you remember, Shehzad, this was a small sacrifice because at that day I lost my 10 soldiers, 10 Shaheeds. So their sacrifice is far greater, all right? So we have to, on the day of the judgment, we as a nation, we have to be answerable to those Shohada who have sacrificed their lives.
That's true.
And it is a salute to those guys
Right.
who no more with us.
Right, but Alhamdulillah, General Saab, you are very much active and on your two feet. But let's talk about, since you served in the areas, how does this psychological trauma impact those communities and their societal behaviors and, of course, the economic activities as well?
Maryam, I think this is a wonderful question you have asked. You know that when we talk of terrorism, you know the terrorist militaries or the security forces, they fight the terrorist, and the nation fights the terrorism. So once we are fighting the terrorism, this is basically those people of those areas, you know, they were already subjected by Khawarij. So they were not living their life as per their own aspirations or their own will. So they were under a lot of tremendous pressure. But once these operations started, unfortunately at that time, they had to leave their houses, they had to migrate. So it's very challenging, extremely challenging that you leave your house and, you know, and then they were, it was kind of a catch-22 for them.
Right,
you know?
and when we talk about IDPs, I cannot help but ask you about the challenges that women and children in the areas face. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, it's very challenging. It's a lot of trauma, you know. You're not in a house, your children are not going to school. And I tell you, these people of especially Bajor and Kurram, and these are educated people. They send all their children to the schools. They have a very good school system, and they are extremely better educated than maybe North Waziristan or South Waziristan areas. So, you know, so the whole, I mean, fiber or the whole cycle of their life was highly perturbed, then it is very challenging for your women, and especially the culture of these areas, these
Chadar
Pakhtun
and Char
areas,
Diwali.
Chadar and Char Diwali, and they have a lot of respect for their women. So once they're out of the house, you can understand, maybe we are unable to understand the trauma which they have gone through. That's why once now, if we talk about the operations in different, so there is a lot of resistance, because of these traumas.
Because
and
there
these,
is kind of
yes,
generational trauma that they are dealing with.
Exactly. You can understand now. Look at the Afghan people. Look at the Afghan children who were born in the war. So other than war, they have seen nothing.
Nothing.
So anybody who is living in the far-flung area of South Waziristan, who has seen these traumas and all that war, if he comes here to Islamabad, all right, if he's here and he see people who are in F6 or F7, so
That's true.
once they
Absolutely,
start comparing,
Jasim.
then they ask this question that where is the state, That's why I'm saying through whole of a nation approach, we have to win this war at all costs for the people of Pakistan.
Exactly. Faisal, can you hear us?
Definitely.
Okay, so we are talking about the trauma these families faced, and especially children who had to suffer and endure the harsh circumstances in those areas. But now I'm talking about the priceless sacrifices and unprecedented examples set by the Shuhada and their families. And of course, they've been through a lot of trauma, Maryam, as we are discussing. We salute them. The government, of course, offered so much compensation in the past, and every year and every day, in fact, we salute their sacrifices.
Let's talk about those.
So exactly, those families, how do they think, and what narrative they have managed to build over the period of time against these Khawarij and militants and their anti-Islam and anti-state narrative.
Shehzad, as General Sahab, first of all, I salute him as well, and all those officers and soldiers who laid down their life, because you know that during our journalistic career, we have covered all these operations, whether it was in Sawat, Operation Rahe Nijat, Rahe Rast, and lots of other operations, and we have witnessed all accounts when people displaced from South Waziristan, from North Waziristan, from Sawat, from all other areas, Bajor, Rukzai, and all that. So it was a very traumatic situation at that time, and no doubt that whole of the nation sacrificed for having peace and stability in this country, and no doubt about that.
Right. And Faisal, can you tell us about the role of international aid agencies? Do you think they assisted the government of Pakistan in some initiatives to deal with these families who were affected by terrorism?
Yeah, definitely. Earlier, during the early course of time, because when the operations were started back in 2007-8, international community was not much responsive. After 3 to 4 years passed, in 2011 or 12, most of the United Nations aid agencies, particularly to the Afghan refugees, like UNHCR, Human Commission for Refugees, then to our IDPs, particularly when we are talking about the World Health Organization, then the World Food Program, the FAO, the Food and Agriculture Organization, and all others. They have assisted a lot to through their watch programs, through the shelter programs, through their food and assistance in that particular perspective. But a whole at that particular time, and a whole of the government approach, whole of the nation approach was there. Even people of those areas in which IDPs came to, they have given shelters. They sacrificed like our legacy of Islam, and as Muslims, as we have sacrificed for the Afghan refugees. So these people were our own people, and the local communities and the local population, they assisted, and that was again a
Right.
prime example of the sacrifice made by the Pakistani people. And when we are talking about overall scenario, I think so that right now, as General Sahab rightly said, the whole of the nation approach right now is required, because in 2014, when we have carved the National Action Plan, and then afterwards we have initiated Operation Zarbe Az, we have got those successes and unprecedented successes just because of the not only sacrifices of our armed forces, security forces, police personnel, intelligence, but also by the nation. And we have lost, at least till today, as the Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif rightly said, that at least 130 billion US dollars we have lost in economic terms. We
Exactly.
have lost lots of.
Exactly from this figure, Faisal, I would like to go to Dr. Jasim, Maryam, with your permission. Dr. Saab, I mean, we got so many figures over the period of time, but we can safely say that we suffered at least more than $100 billion direct and indirect economic losses. We were promised, in Coalition Support Fund, several other funding facilities, but those promises were never fulfilled in real terms. And of course, we were not the one who waged this war against all those militants. I mean, they had their own interests, the Western and superpowers, and then Pakistan suffered a lot. So the question is now, the very critical one, is how would we recover from these losses? I mean, $100 billion is a staggering amount.
Yes, very, very pertinent. Before answering to how our resilience and economic recovery will shape the coming years, I will link one more figure, and one statement that you mentioned is the trauma that family goes through. You know, this figure that is quoted by international and national medias on the loss that we have suffered, this is in terms of those direct building loss,
infrastructure
losses,
yeah,
or some services that were hired to clear those things and ABCD. Now I think I must quote that the trauma, cognitive development trauma, the child which is exposed to the trauma in first 5 years has its lifelong impact on the productivity. This is a literature published by Harvard and through international researchers.
Yeah.
And I also mention and want to thank also, McLean Harvard Initiative, that the Scott, his team, they are also supporting us in, making those policies that focus the child cognitive development and child trauma and how it affects the mental health. So if you start measuring that impact, because, there are some families that suffer directly, 83,000 or so. So the children within those families is a very big number. Now coming those to indirectly watching those through media,
the psychological
through
trauma.
talks, the psychological talks that children are having through.
Since Dr. Jasim, you alluded to these figures, I want to talk about this a recent report that was published by World Health Organization in 2022, and it indicates that Pakistan lacks a sufficient healthcare system with all that trauma that not only children but of course their families are suffering directly, indirectly. What kind of measures has the government taken, or we need to be taking in future, since you are affiliated with the government?
Yes, you're right. On one hand, while the primary health care is being strengthened by having the psychosocial support and the mental health components inbuilt at them, or through telemedicine, as well as through telephonic psychosocial support, the government has established dedicated psychosocial support and mental health unit within the government planning sections, so that they can direct and monitor the policies that relate to the psychosocial support, because this is one element that is actually doesn't very visible but has a very great impact. I mean, nobody knows what you think and how you produce because of the mental status of that child. So the government is integrating the mental health and psychosocial support within the health policies, within the development framework, and a significant amount has been allocated.
And what challenges are we facing in implementation of these initiatives?
We need to have a human capital, the trained human resource who understand how to address that. And many UN agencies, including UNICEF, WHO, World Bank, and international partners like McLean, they are helping us to build this resilience of responding to the economical challenge in shape of our mental and psychosocial stresses that we are having through this war on terrorism.
Exactly. Jalsa, but my questions still remain unanswered about how would we recover, but we can always ask this later on. But Jalsa, first, the thing is that in terms of cost, human cost and economic cost. But this war is not between the two formal states or two entities. I mean, the enemy is invisible, is covered enough to find out the soft targets, attacking the innocent children, civilians, and even not sparing the worship places. The thing is, but we have demonstrated that we are very resilient and we are not, scared of their, cowardice or as antics. How do you think this reason is good enough for all of us as a nation to defeat it once and for all, because still we say that we have defeated them, but there are some splinter elements that how would be 100% successful in the future.
Look, Shehzad, to answer this question, your query, we need to understand that what kind of threat we are facing. It's a protracted conflict now. And probably, unfortunately, this will going to stay for the future course as well in some other forms, We have transferred from the conventional war to the hybrid, and now in the hybrid, another additional aspects of the digital terrorism, illegal spectrums. So once our enemies, today Pakistan is facing mix of proxy war and state-sponsored terrorism coming from our good old friend India through Afghanistan. So India is the sponsor, and informed of the TTP and these non-state actors and proscribed organizations, they are available to them as client. So once they have seen that, once they have assessed that they are unable to defeat Pakistan in the conventional domain, all right, because on every escalation ladder, Pakistan has matched them, and at some time even Pakistan has gone to the upper escalation ladder. If they have crossed the borders, so we have crossed at 11 o'clock lights, so they have met that ladder. If they have tested 5, they have gone for 5 tests, we have done 8. So once they have seen that this nation, their military, we are unable to defeat them, so they adopted this hybrid war.
But how absurd and ridiculous is this, that every day we are facing this real threat, and every day there is an incident, an act of terror in Pakistan, but I hardly remember any such incidents took place in India in the recent past. But again, they are blaming us for sponsoring terrorism, and this is ridiculous. Yes. Of course.
And
Shehzad,
also to add to Shehzad's question, of course, Pakistan's government, with the help of military, has launched Operation Azm-e-Istehkam as well in June. How do you think this is going to be able to combat resurgence of terrorism in Pakistan, and what needs to be done to go towards the whole of nation approach that you earlier alluded to as well?
Okay, so there are two things. First, speaking about the Shehzad, what you have asked. Shehzad, we must understand that we have a new mindset in our neighborhood. Though Hindu mindset was almost like this, but not all Hindus. There are good Hindus as well, but this Hindutva mindset and the application of, yes. So in this region, they have multiple objectives. We need to understand the Indo-Pacific strategy also, all right, and the role which they have given to India. So in Pakistan, they are targeting Pakistan to, subjugate Pakistan. They want a subservient Pakistan, falling to their policies as other neighbors which they have been doing, but they are challenged in inner circle now. And then the Chinese and the economic aspects, all right. So China is the main competitor of Washington. India is friend of Washington. So the CPEC which is going on, because all the economic activities and soft targets you have already indicated. So
we are the soft targets, being a friend or partner of China.
Partners of China, because our economic activity and the Chinese economic growth is also being challenged. And the new mindset Hindutva, that's why they have increased this war, and they have the franchises available in the form of TTP, and for the money, they are all available. We have a disorganized Afghanistan. We were expecting that this caretaker government will bring some peace. They must have learned from the past and the pledges which they have made in the Doha Accord. But unfortunately, the biggest sufferer of this government are the people of Afghanistan and then the Pakistan. So this is a mix of all. That's why we talk about if we have to fight the terrorism, the whole of, because each one of us who is sitting here, every citizen of Pakistan is the target. Now, what is this digital terrorism? What is this fake news? Disinformation lab is right in front of us.
So India is a hub of generating these all fake news.
Yes. So they generate a fake news, ANI picks up that news, and then it is spread to all the media internationally. So what we need to understand is that every citizen of Pakistan is the target. So it is, the military will fight whatever they are tasked. But government must understand, we are talking about the social and other deprivations and traumas and all that. Yes.
So the importance of Azm-e-Istehkam.
Yes, Azm-e-Istehkam, these are going to be intelligence-based operations. intelligence based, because we should not, I mean, confuse the nation. Once we talk of operations, a lot of alarms are created.
If I understood you correctly, said as the citizens of Pakistan, in our individual capacity, it's of our responsibility, you know, to contribute our role against this menace.
Exactly, exactly. There's no way out other than that.
Right, right. And Faisal, when we talk about, of course, terrorism, investment, foreign direct investment remains an important aspect. And like our guest also alluded to earlier as well, that this remains an important aspect. How do you think in the bigger picture, terrorism threats in Pakistan and resurgence of terrorism in the recent times is linked to CPAC? Faisal, can you hear us?
Yeah, definitely, definitely. Maryam, General Saab is absolutely right, and the other panelists as well, because right now what we are facing is that externally there is a containment of China policy. India is very much the part of it, not only at the land routes, but also in the Indian Ocean. Then we have competitors when we are talking about CPAC, China-Pakistan Economic Corridor. Obviously, the terrorist entities who are backed by India, sponsored by India, having financial and training support, having refuge there in at the Afghan soil. And in Afghanistan, we are facing an extremist government who has the allegiance, and some of the factions have a direct terrorist links with those TTP, Balochistan Liberation Army, or BLF, and all that. And the whole of the nation approach is required in that particular perspective, because from the borders and then internally, there are lots of, because earlier when we are talking about the operations of the TUESADAY, we have lots of successes that at least 90% of the tribal areas were flushed out of all those terrorists, and 100% of the hideouts were already dismantled or destroyed. Then we have at least 83% of the sleeper cells across Pakistan. Those were all destroyed, and it was a very coordinated approach. Right now, what is required is that we have to act upon the National Action Plan 14 points, which were revised in 2021, and we have to focus on all these 14 points. That is the way out. We have to focus on that. Along with that, it is important that we have to
That is the way out. Faisal, you rightly pointed it out, but since we are moving towards the conclusion of a program, I would really like to ask Dr. Jasim to, you know, decipher this, the way out. Explain it in a very simple words for us or for our audience, that how would we recover from these losses, specifically the economic losses.
Yes, yes. So I will also refer back to the unanswered question, like, are we on a track, and how we further augment and strengthen to our recovery.
Yep.
Yes, we are on track, no doubt about that. Look at the economic indicators. Look at the, or FDI increase, inflation rate going down substantially, the oil prices and the dollar prices stability over 6 months. Everybody knows that, the big indicators. Now, coming to our, upcoming strategy is our readiness and accepting and recognizing our people that we all needs to work as one unit. Like General Saab mentioned, this is beyond the conventional war to digital as well as many other war aspects. We always came across that through military sources, through intelligence resources, through ABCD, that attack is happening. But the people, unless they cooperate and engage as a one unit to solve this issue, this will be very difficult. Because in everywhere in the world, whenever you go, you see many advertisements, even in Australia, America. If you see any suspected package, if you see anything, report.
The foreign investors, they very well know the ground reality in Pakistan, but even then they are coming and investing heavily in Pakistan.
Exactly.
Despite the fact that know that we have the potential.
Of course, but at the same time, Dr. Jasim, lastly, your few words on, we are also witnessing brain drain due to security reasons as well. How can we create that safe environment, not only for the foreign direct investment, but of course, domestic small businesses as well?
Of course. You see the government policies through various initiatives, including the establishment of SAFC, the various coordinating forums, various advisory bodies, applying the conducive, secured policies for males and females both. That's number one. Number two, introducing the entrepreneurship and skill set through easy loans, through startup businesses, through incubator centers and establishment of center of excellence in nearly all the public sector universities, linking them to international market. That's another thing that the government is doing for last 1 year or so. These are very new things that is actually giving us good results. Number third, improving our readiness level beyond the conventional war to all the angles of the possible terrorism. For example, bioterrorism and how we need to combat the addiction of the phones and relying on the fake news is also one very disruptive element. So these are those things which are in the top priority of the government, and various policies are being implemented in coordination with the military, armed forces and the civil authorities and the provinces. They all need to work together now. There's no time for us to go for small things. This is a bigger cause, and Pakistan needs to establish its own identity as its own, having its own writ, not to sacrifice like we did for others, including US.
Right. And last words, General Saab, what is the way forward when we talk about a resilient nation like Pakistan, and with stories like yourself, with not only stories of survival but inspiration as well for the younger generations?
And one addition, if you are given a chance to again go back to those areas and fight against those animals, would you still go?
Inshallah, of course. That's the real pride of a soldier, and that is always a real, want of a soldier to be in the field. We are meant for this. And alhamdulillah, my son has also joined military, so I am already, But anyways, coming to Maryam's question. Maryam, look, I would like to conclude by saying that we have to adopt the whole of a nation approach. The military should strike precision kinetic application inside Pakistan and, if required, outside Pakistan as well, from where we are being targeted.
And we have done it in the past.
Yes, we have done it. We have already shown the will. And coming over to the government, superior foreign diplomatic maneuver to tell the world that we are aggressive approach.
Right.
And then extraordinary superior socio-economic maneuver. Once we talk of clear hold and build. So clear and hold is done by the armed forces, but the build is the responsibility of the government, and especially the provincial governments. So whole of a nation approach, every citizen is the target, and we have to, and inshallah, we were almost there, and again we will be there, inshallah.
Inshallah.
Thank you very much, General Zahid Mehmood, for joining us in today's program and for your valuable input. Thank you very much, Dr. Jasim, for joining us in today's program. Thank you very much, Faisal, for joining us in today's program, and thank you, Shehzad, for the wonderful discussion that we had on this special transmission of PTV World on terrorism. Of course, Pakistan is a resilient nation, and we are facing a dual threat of terrorism. It is not causing, of course, safety issues to citizens, but the economic losses are huge. And when we move forward, of course, we have to adopt a whole of nation approach. That's all from this special transmission. Allah Hafiz.